Katelyn Grady.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, you don't need this.
I have
You have to bring
my
the mic.
Britney mic. Yeah. Thank you. Annika was amazing. Where'd she go? Yeah, that was super dope. Oh, yeah. One of the quotes she said in her song is, "You can be whoever you want," which is like kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit this morning. Like, we're basically physically, mentally, and emotionally made up of patterns. And it's really exciting that we get to create those. Actually, that pretty much sums it up, so I'm just going to go. So we're going to do a little activation. So I'm going to ask you all to stand up. Andre, you're famous. Andre's here. Okay, we're going to start with a full body shake. This is a myofascial release technique. If you don't know, your body has like a little suit of like kind of looks like spider webs that cover up all of your muscles called fascia. And it gets kind of tied up and tight in places for all kinds of reasons. And so this first thing we're going to do is a technique to just kind of like loosen that up and release it. And then the next thing we're going to do is called heel drops. And it's just like what it sounds like. And I'll guide it when we get there. And that's like a nervous system reset. And then the last thing we're going to do is just a couple of breaths together to ground and get centered and receptive. Okay? So first, full body shake. Hands. You can shake your wrists forward and back and side to side. Shake it up, baby, now. Okay, and then to shake your elbows, it's like you're flicking water off your fingers. Bathroom is out of paper towels. You're just flicking it, flicking it, flicking it. And then to get into the shoulders, little bounce in the knees to let the shoulders really blop up and down. Ideally, we're really letting our muscles shake loose from the bones here, so really, really jiggly, like not holding any tension in your muscles at all. And then hokey pokey, right leg in, give the right leg a shake. See if you can get your ankle kind of jiggling like we did with the wrist. See if you can feel your calf muscle jiggle loose from your shin bone and your thigh muscles jiggle loose from your upper leg bone. Really feel like the muscles are jiggling. Okay, hokey pokey, left leg in, other leg, give it a good shake. Shake, shake, shake. Yeah, yeah, shake it, shake it, shake it. And then this is my favorite one, both feet on the ground, jiggle your butt meat. See if you can really get your glutes to jiggle loose from your pelvis bone. You want them to be really, really jiggly, 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 jiggly. Your low back and your hips, love this. So good. And let that go. Okay, now up onto your tiptoes, and then like just as much as you can, just drop your heels down. It does not hurt to let a breath go out of your mouth at the same time. That's a wonderful thing. This is a nervous system reset technique. It's supposed to be really grounding. Let's get like 10-ish more. I like to flick my fingers down at the same time. Really just like drop everything, drop everything, drop everything, drop everything. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. And then just for a second, take your hands right onto your body. And let there be a settling, like we just shook up a snow globe, and you're the snow globe, and all the snow is flying around. And we're going to put it down on the shelf now and let all the snow or glitter, or whatever's in your snow globe, settle, get clear. Cool. And then let's take 3 breaths together. Take a really big inhale through your nose and expand as much as you can. And then purse your lips like you're going to blow out 1,000,000 birthday candles. And exhale as slowly as you can. When you exhale longer than you inhale, you're kicking yourself into parasympathetic or rest and digest. So we get just chill, yeah? 2 more like that. Big inhale, expand, fill up a lot. And then purse your lips and blow out. Just as slowly as you can, not like creating tension, but just slowing down your exhale by narrowing the air passageway. And I'm going to join you for this last one because, y'all, I need it. Big inhale. And then before you sit back down, maybe just notice how you feel. That was like 4 minutes maybe to do all 3 of those things. And if, like, Brianna, you have a corporate job or you're really at a computer all day, or maybe your work is stressful in some other kind of way, it's cool to know that we have these tools available to us. And maybe you feel like you just got a little reset. That's what I hope. Cool. I'm going to talk a lot now. I have never been to Creative Mornings? I had to raise my hand when Brianna asked that. Boo. You guys can boo. It's okay. I've been teaching, thank you. Yes, hecklers. I have been teaching the same yoga class every Friday morning at the Body Electric Yoga Company since we opened in 2013. Yeah, and I'm taking my shoes off. And some of my students have been taking that class every Friday, every week for those 11 plus years. And so it's hard for me to not show up to that. But when Brianna asked me to come and speak, I was so honored and humbled and terrified. I had to say yes. So here I am. I picked pattern because I feel like yoga has a lot to say about pattern, and I really love yoga. Wait, I should probably click something. I already said that. Also, shout out to Jenny Miller, the other founder and owner of the Body Electric, for making this slideshow, because I am technologically very hesitant. So when Brianna was like, I strongly recommend like some visuals, I basically froze. So, but thank you. Seriously, thank you so much. All right. So yoga's been in my life for 25 years. I got into yoga my senior year of high school, 25 years ago. I picked it out of a hat. I had my social studies teacher my senior year of high school was the baseball coach, and I don't know what it was like in your high schools, but like our coaches had to also teach, but they really were there for the sports. Yeah, so like to make it fun for himself, he decided that we were going to do a report on sports from around the world, and we were going to pick our country out of a hat, and I got India. And so I'm thinking about sports from India. I'm like, cricket? It's not really Indian, is it? It's not. So I asked if I could do my report on yoga, even though it's not really a sport, and he said yes, and now here we are, 25 years later. It stuck. I really dug it. Because I love yoga, and because yoga's from India, I thought it was pretty dope that the theme from today and the beautiful painting that we have from, I wrote her name down, Nishant Saldana is the artist of the painting, and that came from Chennai in India. These are some other images that Jenny grabbed from Chennai. And one thing we think about when we think about pattern is like something that repeats, like Brianna's dress, or like anytime you like stripes. But what we're going to talk about today is more like patterns in the world and patterns in our lives. Here's some questions that we can think about. Which patterns in your life are worth repeating, and which ones would you consider changing? And what new pattern or patterns do you think you might like to create? So this is Creative Mornings, so that's kind of the thread. Like, we are the creators of ourselves through creating our habits of movement, thought, emotion, whatever. It's exciting that we get to create ourselves all of the time. So I guess before we really dig in, let's define terms. I'm just guessing this is like a moment that, yeah! Let's define terms. A pattern is something that repeats in a predictable manner, and a habit is a tendency to follow a pattern. So to sort of just all get on the same page about what that means, I'm going to share a metaphor. I'm going to use erosion to sort of illustrate how we get into patterns and how patterns get more or less deep. So we've got a big pile of dirt. You can just like imagine like a little hill of dirt. I'm going to take a big glass of water and I'm going to pour it on top of that pile of dirt. And what happens? It like finds its way, right? Maybe the dirt has like some rocks in it here and there, and that helps direct the water this way and that. But one way or another, the water is going to find the path of least resistance down to the bottom of the hill, and it's going to make some little streams. A pattern has begun. You know, it's not a pattern when it happens one time, though. So I take a second glass of water and I pour it on top. What happens? Yeah, a lot of the water is going to follow those first paths. You might get a few new little pathways, but essentially most of the water is looking for that path of least resistance, so it's going to follow that same path, and then what happens to those same paths? They get deeper. And you keep going, 2 glasses, 4 glasses, 7 glasses, 1,000 glasses, and now some of those initial little paths are now like canyons, like seriously, yeah. Seriously deep. I did look at this before, but I am very nervous. Okay, so Some patterns are more or less ingrained. Something can be a pattern when you do it a dozen times, and some things are patterns because we've done them millions of times. Some of our patterns or habits in our lives are unconscious. We do them without really thinking or worrying about it. It's like an operating system, right? Some examples of that. Maybe think about like that moment when you get in your car. What do you do first? Like, what's the order of ops for you? Just think about it for a second. It's cool. If you can't get yourself there, you're like, do I put the key in first? Do I put my bag down? I really don't know, because you don't need to. It's okay. That can just be operating system. We don't need to reinvent that wheel every time we get in the car. We have limited bandwidth, right? I have only so much bandwidth to give to creating new things on a daily basis. All of you guys we're all creatives, and anytime you have to create something new, like this talk, it takes a lot of energy, right? So thank God we don't have to refigure out how to brush our teeth or which order of operations, put in the key, then put the seatbelt on, or should I put the seatbelt on first and then put the key in? Luckily, we don't have to worry about that. We can just let things be on an operating system. Some other examples are like what shoulder you throw your bag onto every day. You put your bag on one shoulder. How you respond to certain questions. How are you? Or triggers. And then some of our pattern making is super intentional. You might, like a couple times a year, it's like very common to do this at New Year's. You might a couple times a year be like, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or like whatever it is. That's a very intentional pattern. You're deciding, I'm setting it here and I'm doing it. It could be something small or something big. It could be operating systems at work that you write and create and decide you're going to follow. Some patterns you're really intentionally creating. So we're making patterns whether we really mean to or not. A lot of times, like the getting in the car example, like you just did it one time, and then it's just very normal and natural for us to just rip, like the water, path of least resistance, do the same thing again. The Yoga Sutras talks a lot about patterns. Oh, I'll just keep, hey, for my visual learners. The Yoga Sutras talks a lot about patterns, and one thing that we want, they're called samskaras in the sutras, and one thing that we know from the Yoga Sutras about patterns is they can be helpful, they can be harmful, or they can be benign. You guys can use different synonyms for those words, like if those words carry weird weight or whatever, but basically they can be good for us, bad for us, or like neither here nor there, like getting in the car and how you brush your teeth, although maybe some of you guys are not brushing your teeth very well. And most of these patterns, we're going to like kind of just be following them because we've already followed them. But sometimes we might need to like stop, pause, and make a change. So what I really want to talk about is like when you have a pattern that you do want to change, how you do that. And I'm going to start with just an example from my life. It's a recent example. Here's like a recipe. I'm going to come back to this. Here's me. Okay, so I'm going to use the example of the pull-up. When I was 27, I was kind of starting to get into rock climbing, and I couldn't do a pull-up. So this was a new physical pattern that I wanted to create. So I had to first train to be able to do one pull-up. So I did the negative pull-up. I would jump up or get lifted up to the bar and then try to lower down slowly, and it started like this. Oh, God. Oh, God. And eventually, the negative got slower and slower. And then I would do sets of 5 negatives. And then eventually, I could do one pull-up. And then when I could do one pull-up, I started to try to ingrain that pattern more, and I would do sets of 5 single pull-ups. And then maybe later sets of 5 sets of 2 pull-ups. So I'm patterning it. Why? Because I wanted to be better at rock climbing, and I felt like I needed that pattern to serve me in that sport. And then like 7 years ago or something, I started paddling, another pull sport. So I'm like, I really got to drill in the pull-ups now. So I start programming my pull-ups into my workouts on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm like a programming person. I was serious about what I said about the bandwidth, and I really like all of my stuff to be scheduled. And even within that, I like that to be programmed because I like to free up bandwidth for playtime, right? So now my pull-ups are scheduled in on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It gets to a point where I'm doing like 200 pull-ups a week. And it really worked. Like, I got good at my sports. I was crushing it. And also this other thing happened, which was I was in pain. You guys care about me. It was hurting me. So this like pattern that I started because it was going to be a good thing for me and my sports, at some point became harmful. Now, you guys, it took me, this is embarrassing, like 2 years to admit it. The pull-up had become like part of my identity. My ego was like clinging to the pull-up. People hashtag goals me, you guys, on my Instagram posts of pull-ups. Like, how can I give up pull-ups? I get so many compliments for the pull-ups. I feel so strong and accomplished. Not very many, like, people can do this many pull-ups. It's a really hard movement. I'm proud of the pull-ups. How can I give up the pull-ups? Like, so it took me a long time, first of all, to just admit the pull-up is putting me in pain. Anybody that cares about like how that really worked in my body is that my lat tendons that attach to my pelvis basically took over all of my hip flexing. My hip flexors went to sleep. Well, you don't need us. Your lats can do everything. And so my lower back was doing everything. So I'm in pain. I finally admit it, but it then took me like another long time to actually do anything about it because I'm clinging to my identity. This is a thing. A lot of times when we finally decide that we're going to change a pattern, it does take that. It takes being in pain, some kind of crisis, like something kind of bad happening around it. Otherwise, like patterns, even the ones that aren't necessarily good for us, like doing that many pull-ups at that point in my life, are comfortable. It's comfortable to do stuff you've already done. It's uncomfortable to do stuff you haven't done. Right? That's why we like to do these activations, get everybody up and being uncomfortable, get out of your box, make yourself bigger. But it's hard. It's hard to do. So like 4 months ago, this is so embarrassing that it took me this long. You guys, 25 years of yoga, still this difficult for me to admit and then actually change a pattern. Okay, so it's hard work. 4 months ago, I was like, fine, I'll do less pull-ups. Doing like half as many pull-ups, like just taking it a little easier in my workouts. I feel so much better. And what's interesting, the most interesting part of it for me is that actually I'm climbing stronger and like feeling better in the boat paddling. Like I didn't want to give this thing up because I thought it was making me like a beast at my sports and so good at my sports, but actually I just kind of felt crappy, and then like that was probably at a certain point plateauing or hurting my performance. So I had to do this work. I can imagine a world though where without these tools of yoga and the support that I have in my life, where I would have not made that change and I would just keep having low back pain like forever. So hopefully that was like inspiring. I hope you won't take as long as me. Hopefully your egos are like a little less crunchy. But basically, all of that is to say that we get to choose. Like, we get to choose our patterns, and there's a recipe for changing patterns that you want to change. And that recipe starts with awareness. No one's going to change or do anything about what you don't even know is there, right? So the first thing we have to do is take a look at ourselves. So in yoga, that's called Prati Aara. We spend most of our time, like we have these senses and we use them to gather external data and like make calculations to like act and do stuff in the world. And in yoga, we invite you to turn your senses and turn your vision really back on yourself. What do I feel? What do I notice about myself? How do I move? How do I think? What do I see repeating? Is it good for me? Is it not good for me? And then make decisions. So the first step is observe. And then the second step is make a choice. I'm going to choose a pattern that doesn't really serve me anymore. Then I've got to change it. How do I change it? Whew, crack. I have to pick a new pattern to replace it with. So you've got to pick a new pattern. How do I pick it? It's got to come from you. A lot of our unconscious patterning and habits come from our parents, how we were raised. Things were just like repeating because we saw them repeated so many times in our lives. I mean, parents guardians, whoever like kind of was all around you all the time growing up, things you saw repeated. Usually we kind of pick a dominant person or the person who seemed like they ruled, and we imitate them, right? They come from our communities, our societies, expectations of people, maybe compliments from people. People really compliment a thing about you, and it makes you sort of want to cling to it, like me with the pull-up. So observe, choose something else that really, it has to come from you, needs to be something that really feels like truth to you. Find it by going in, looking in, and then you got to repeat the new thing a lot. Well, I guess you repeat the new thing like in ratio to how much you repeated the pattern you're replacing, right? So you got a little stream you want to replace. It might be a little easier, take less time. If you're looking to replace a pattern that's been with you or maybe with your family and in your DNA, if you believe in that, forever, it's going to take a lot of work. So patience and grace. And then there's one more little sparkle of ingredient, and that's faith. Is it faith in like a God or something? Like, no, it doesn't have to be anything like that. Like, I feel like faith, the word, whatever. But if that works for you, cool. But really what you need faith in is the fact that this will work. That with dedication and discipline, with the desire and the repetition, that you can change your patterns and therefore change yourself. You can truly be, what did Annika say? You can truly be whoever you want. You really, truly can be whoever you want. I think that's really exciting, and I really, truly believe that when we do this work on ourselves, that we can positively influence our relationships, our communities, and even the world. Yeah. So that's really it. Don't be shy. Create yourself.
We do ask. Thank you so much, Katelyn. I know personally, I just was trying to work on patterns yesterday, so I feel personally called out, but also like so appreciative. In a good way. But now is one of my favorite parts, as most Q&A. Do we have some burning questions for Katelyn on pattern or something applicable to? Maybe.
Oh, God.
Or did she answer all of Live's questions for all of us? And also, is everyone here been to the Body Electric? Has anyone gone to the Body Electric? Hopefully, yes, perfect. We have a lot of the teachers here today and this morning. Oh, geez, there's a ton of stuff.
I forgot about them. You weren't giving me the signal.
Do we have a question in the crowd? Oh, yes, Noelle, one of our CMers.
Hi. What did you replace the pull-up with?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so on Mondays, I was typically doing 3 sets of 10 pull-ups. So now instead, I'm doing 3 sets of 5 pull-ups and then also toes to bar. So 5 toes to bar, because like remember I said like my lats were taking over for my hip flexors. So I'm trying to like, this is a Grand Canyon-ish sized pattern. So I added in some of the thing that needs to like turn on for these to be able to turn off. So I do 5 and 5. I added like belly back bending. On Wednesdays, I am also doing like half my pull-up sets. On Wednesdays, I do 12 sets. I was doing 12 sets of 7 pull-ups. Now I do 12 sets of 3, then 4, then 3, then 4, and I do knee raises, like center, and then like side. And then on Fridays, same thing, half the pull-ups, more knee raises, and like toes to bar kind of stuff.
I know you talked about replacing that pattern, but what's a new pattern that you're looking to start?
Good question. Well, like in this particular, if we're going to stick with that same example, I'm trying to like get my hip flexors to work. So I'm trying to do that pattern. In general, like a new pattern that I'm trying to start is like being a little softer. I feel like sometimes in our lives we tend to operate like pendulums. Like for a long time when the yoga practice for me was like really more spiritual, and my time on my mat was like very woo-woo, like super just like stretching. And I was like a skinny person that was very weak and like very flexible and also in pain for other reasons. And then I like went hard the other way, like until recently, where I was like I got like really thick and strong and I need to like, it's so, like, we get out of balance. We get out of balance. So I was like here, and then I was like here, and I'm trying to get back here. And hopefully like, you know, I'm 42 now, and ideally if like this is your pendulum, you go like this, hopefully at some point you're gonna swing to balance at the center. Fingies crossed, I'll let you know.
I have a question as well. Is it easier for you, given that you're a yoga teacher and a business owner, and is it easier for you to identify patterns in other people than it is for yourself?
No, you're going to recognize patterns when you're looking for them. You're going to, so if I'm looking for them, maybe, and like, am I not always looking to myself? Yeah. But really, where you're going to recognize patterns is where you're looking and where you're paying attention, where you're giving your attention. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I'll pass it down.
What has been your process for self-compassion when you backtracked on changing a pattern? What does that look like for you? You've talked a lot about like the physical process, but when you get off track, where do you go mentally to bring yourself back to the new plan or new baseline?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I feel like I got to a place at some point in the last handful of years where I just realized, number one, that's just human, like that's human stuff. And I'm not like especially crappy at like pattern replacement. It's just very human and normal. And like we are at times more or less strong or have more or less bandwidth, right? Like things come up in life, like heartbreak or injuries or sickness or like something else really needs a lot of your attention. It's going to be a lot harder to like put a lot of energy into this pattern replacement, which requires a lot if you've got other stuff going on. So just like that knowledge that it's like really human, and then that everybody's going through it and doing it, I think it's really just kind of like, and then the other thing is, it's not helpful to beat yourself up. If the goal is like get here and do this thing, like spending energy and time judging yourself and beating yourself up is like very counter. That's also bandwidth, and bandwidth's very poorly spent. So like just that practical knowledge, I think, helps pull me out of that. Not that I don't sometimes wallow in self-pity. Yee.
All right. Well, can we give it up for...
Thank you.